Hey,
Might have to have in the bedroom until I can get this one
Right.
down.
does anybody have the book to hold up so we can take our screenshot?
Yeah, I do.
He does.
Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us. Welcome. I was telling them my dad's here helping me clean out a drain and fixing a vacuum, so I may have to mute myself at 1 second just to talk to him like he just showed up. So I'm like, oh no.
What a sweet dad.
I know he's amazing. I'm like my drain has been clogged for a hot minute, so he is helping me fix it because I probably could, but I also don't want to take any chances.
Very good.
So I have to start by saying I absolutely positively loved this book. Oh my
Oh, thank you.
goodness. It was so much fun. So we're gonna take our screenshot really fast and then we can dive in. All right, guys. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. All right, so let's dive in. What was your inspiration for writing this?
Honestly, like as crazy as the book is, a lot of the inspiration came from my own life. I lived below the poverty line for like almost a decade. So I really wanted to talk about like wealth inequality. And then like literally when I was writing the book, I was living in the Hollywood Hills. I was living in like a duplex and I was living in the downstairs. And it was like a 1-bedroom. It was the nicest place I had ever lived. But yet I was surrounded by like even more phenomenal wealth, and so I just kind of also wanted to talk about just like the sort of different levels and I guess my own experiences, like interacting with extremely wealthy people versus people who are struggling. Yeah.
I really liked it too.
Oh, thank you.
It's my favorite so far this year, and we're in October. So
Oh, that means so much.
I was gonna say we've been lucky to have a lot of authors and we've read a lot of books that keep the gals busy, but this really was one of the best. It was hard to put down. Like I kept turning the pages and I wanted to know more.
it was. I love the dark humor. Lila, she made me laugh out loud. Same here. I
It was
always
so
appreciate
funny.
a wicked sense of humor, and yeah, that appealed to me also.
Thanks, sis.
And I think you diverged, right? So your first book wasn't a thriller, but this book you wrote as a thriller. I was trying to do some like initial research.
So this would be like my 4th book. And all of them have been like kind of thrillers, but I like to try to do, I mean, I always want to like be like challenging myself. And I wanted to do something that felt really different. My first adult book was like a sort of more of a mystery, I guess. It was If I Disappear, and it was about like someone who's obsessed with a true crime podcast. And it was kind of like a lot more like like a straight sort of mystery. Like she goes to a weird town, everyone's doing weird stuff, like what's happening. But then this one, I actually the reason it ended up the way that it did is because we got really down to the wire with it and I wasn't happy with it and I wanted to rewrite the whole book. And because I was like so down to the wire, I was like, I'm just going to use like, because I have a very dark sense of humor. And I was like, I'm just going to use that, even though I felt kind of scared to, because I feel like people kind of don't in books.
Right.
It's kind of like almost, I made it like almost comedic, which I feel like you see that kind of you see Black comedies in film, but you don't really see that as much in books. So I was kind of nervous. But that's why it sort of ended up that way. But I wanted it to feel really different. Like I always want to be trying to like challenge myself and doing something again, like different and hopefully better for me,
Well, and I do have to say that dark sense of humor, it was kind of perfect. I think it resonated and there were moments where I would like, be listening and I would laugh out loud or reading along and literally just find myself laughing out loud. It was fantastic.
No, that's awesome. I'm sure some people like don't really like who don't like read like dark humor probably don't even get it and they're just like, what is that?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I think people like get what I was trying. I'm like, I was trying to be funny. Like that's good. That
I don't. It may not be quite as accessible to some people. I made the mistake of being on Goodreads, and I briefly looked at this, and I thought,
Yeah,
I
and
know.
that's always a mistake.
Yeah.
It's always a horrible
Yeah.
mistake, and I hate to admit that I did it. And you just want to say what it just like whoosh, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I definitely
Yes.
avoid reading reviews because it doesn't make me a better writer. So
Mhm.
but yeah, I think when you do something that's kind of like weird, you for sure get people that maybe it doesn't resonate with. But the cool thing
Yeah.
is that you get people also who it really resonates with and who I think are like really excited by that because they're like, wow, no one else sort of does, you know.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Like that spoke
Yeah.
to me and it's weird and it surprised me.
Yeah, I read the Goodreads reviews first as well, and I think a lot of people just like didn't get the humor. I think it went straight over their heads.
I don't know. I don't
And then I know there was a trigger warning that I saw for like animal abuse, and I'm like, I'm a dog lover, so I was a little bit nervous about that, but
Hold on, Bailey. Phyllis,
Hey,
oh,
Mom, will you mute yourself?
can you mute for a second?
we're good. Okay, but it didn't. I thought it worked very well. We're all dog lovers, and I loved how the characters kind of made it seem like it's okay to kill a person, but not an animal. Who would kill a dog? And I feel the same way. I'm like, you can kill all the people you want, but an animal's not okay.
Yeah, I totally get that. I feel like for me, it's like, because I wrote it, I'm not surprised by it. I can understand that reading that, I would probably find it, there's my dog, by the way. I would find it like upsetting too. But the reason that I wrote that is because I'm obsessed with my animals. Like I have 2 dogs and a horse. And that's like my worst nightmare. And I question that. I'm like, is this okay?
No, I didn't think
You
it
know?
was too bad. Like the reviews made it seem like it would be like horrific, but it wasn't at all.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
and Bailey texted me when she started and she's like, Brittany, how far along are you in this book? And why is there a trigger warning about animals? And I'm like, so
Yeah.
far, like nothing jarring, nothing that has bothered me because we really are all like dog, cat, animal lovers for certain.
yeah, sorry. See, look.
Oh,
I was gonna say, didn't you recently get that dog? I feel like I saw it on
Yes.
Facebook when yes, I've been following along.
Yeah, that's all I post is my animals. So like, obviously I'm like an uber animal person. And to be honest, like, I don't know, like would I have done, would I change it looking back? I don't know. It's hard for me. Like, I guess like, I don't think we have any like trigger warnings in that book, but I feel like I wouldn't even know where to begin because the entire book is like super upset. So I'm kind of like, maybe just don't read anything I write because it's too scary.
Do you
Yeah.
feel like writing this book helped you process some of the trauma of living below the poverty line?
I mean, I think it's like maybe, I mean, a lot of Demi's backstory is my own backstory. And I think honestly, one of like the harder things when you deal with stuff like that is there's nowhere for you ever to talk about it. You feel like, you know, when you're struggling and stuff, you just feel like nobody sort of cares or really wants to know. Like people want to know the good things. They want to know all the happy stuff. So there's really no place for you to ever talk about that, those kind of feelings or those kind of experiences of feeling like, that's one of the harder things. Like I remember like whenever I lost my husband and you're just, and it's not like people should, but you're looking around and you're just like, wow, nobody cares. And this is like the most horrible thing that's ever happened to me, you know? And it's just such a huge like thing. And the world just keeps going on. And it's really like, not that it should stop, but it is hard because you just feel like it doesn't matter. So it really was helpful, I think, in a way of just having a place to actually like talk about that stuff. And it really has, even still to this day, like I think about elements of the book and like realize, oh, that's why I put that in there, or that's why I have that character or whatever it is, you know what I mean? So.
I thought it was interesting, and you said that, and I think we all need to be reminded of this. We talk about people being, you know, self-made millionaires, and there was a whole self-made versus inherited wealth dynamic going on because Margot and Graham were so furious and enraged at people who were making their own way. They wanted to take them down. Those were the people renting. There were people who were actually had some, you know, middle to upper middle class success, but had been on their own terms. But you said in there, you know, it takes a while for people to get to that point where they're doing okay, but it also takes a while for that slide where people are doing okay, but then they start gradually descending. you know, and we've seen so much of that with people who were previously middle class, but due to whatever circumstances, they start that slide until they are below the poverty line.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And it's like, and that, I think either way, whether you're going up or down, it's not something you're controlling. I think people feel it's like luck, like a bad luck or good luck. You know, sometimes people feel like they want to feel like they have control over it. I work hard, I'll get somewhere. But I think that when you're actually in those circumstances, you realize that it's totally beyond your control.
Exactly. I mean, as far as this whole working hard, we've got people out there who are working 2 to 3 jobs. They're obviously working hard and they're barely getting by. So, and they're working hard.
Yeah.
So.
And mobility, it's like crazy. I don't think people like, I mean, when I was in those circumstances, I was living in England, so I was in another country. So I literally had like no connections, and there was just no way that I could ever have got a good job, you know, and it wasn't that I wasn't trying. I was going to, you know, interviews, and obviously I was working, but I could never get out of what I was, you know, getting paid and what I was doing, you know. It's really hard once you're in that situation and you're showing up and you don't have, you know, like means to like take a shower, or you don't have nice clothes. It's hard, you know?
Yeah. And you did show the kind of the seduction of Demi, where she got into that life and it became slow, gradually, and in her own narrative, she's like, yeah, I don't agree with this, and this is wrong, and this is against my principles. But at the same time, going and shopping and buying clothes and having all that wonderful food.
Yeah.
It's a seduction.
Well, and then I was thinking about this recently, because like the significance of Michael, because for me, literally, there were people that were living with me and my husband when we didn't have money, and I kind of based Michael on those people. But it's like interesting if you think about it, because it's like Demi had a change in her circumstances, and immediately like this guy who helped her is asking for her help, and she's like appalled almost, you know what I mean? Like she doesn't want her around. He literally did help her. He gave her a place to live. She wouldn't be there if it wasn't for him. But because he's kind of like, you know, he's a drug addict and he's kind of like a sort of maybe scary, it's like he becomes a bad guy to her, you know? And I think that's really interesting, because I was like, oh, I don't know. I think that you would expect that if you had more money, you would suddenly be, and you've been through that, you'd suddenly be like way more charitable. But I don't think that's necessarily true, because sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared that I'm going to lose this.
Right. I do think we see a lot of that, where there are people who have money, I mean, serious money, not the kind of money where you're paying your mortgage and that, but serious throwaway money, but they live in fear that it's all going to go away.
Yeah, totally.
I have this fear that if I ever make over a certain amount of money, I'll lose my empathy, and I depend on my empathy for my job. Because I've read so many studies about how loss of empathy is correlated to obscenely high wealth. Do you think extreme wealth has the potential to encourage the sociopath within?
Yeah, definitely. And I honestly think, like it's a show in the book, I think that it's even worse for people who are born that way from the beginning. Like even for me, like going from like, to me, it was an extreme circumstance for me of like not really struggling for a long time. And then now like having more like there's, well, I guess I'm not gonna like start saying I'm a sociopath and I lack empathy, but it is like, it's just weird because it's like boring, it's isolating. I don't know. It's definitely like, you don't need to rely on people as much. So I think that sometimes there's a danger of becoming like less nice, you know?
Was that some of was that some of the inspiration for Graham, and like he's bored, she's boring, life is, you know?
So again, like I was living in England. In England, there's the class element to wealth is a lot more, I think, pronounced than it is in America. And so there's like these sort of like posh people. I used to work at I worked at bars in Chelsea, and then my late husband had a really like sort of posh girlfriend once. So we sort of interacted with these really wealthy people. And honestly, it came from a lot of those people. They really act like like the guy like Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, and there's these sort of like very like this horrible aggressive humor, just very like cold and kind of mean. Yeah, I just think in England it's more like noticeable, this idea of like, if you are, you know, have to come from the right family too. It's not just necessarily about how much money you have. It's like the old money idea, you know. And I think I honestly think that the English, because England obviously used to control the entire world, I think that a lot of like the wealth and class system that currently exists today is still like a relic of that, of their history, you know, if that makes sense.
Who was the hardest character to develop and who was your favorite?
What was the hardest character? And who's my favorite? I mean, gosh, I feel like hardest is such like a hard, like is a difficult question, I feel like, because it's like I don't remember like edits and the specifics of like who I changed. I think probably like the harder ones to write though, it would be like probably Lila, just because it's like you're expecting people to stay in this character's point of view, even when they're kind of horrible. So that's kind of like was probably like the trickiest, like on a technical kind of level. And it's like it probably worked for some and not for others. And that what was the second one? Who was my favorite? Oh my God. The dog. Poor dog. These dogs are super clingy. It's okay.
So
Do you
real,
have another book coming out?
Huh?
Do you have another book coming out?
Yeah, I have one coming out next year. And it's like it's called Girls and Their Horses. It's about like mothers and daughters in the horseback riding sort of world in Southern California. Because I used to work, I have a horse in my backyard right now. And I used to teach horseback riding, and I taught in like Orange County in Los Angeles when I very first moved back to America. And so I was kind of like, again, working for these super sort of posh families who like wanted to have their kids, you know, ride horses, and just kind of like experiencing the different sort of, I guess, like different like sort of parenting kind of dynamics. And so it's kind of like, I wanted to make it kind of like Big Little Lies meets Dance Moms.
Okay.
There's like a murdery mystery thing, but it's really just about like being a parent. It's about like, how much should you push? Like, should you push at all? You know, all those kind of questions that I think are really hard to answer. And also horses, which I just love.
Yeah. I love that.
Just getting spoiled it.
so Michael never physically or sexually assaulted Demi Helen, or suggested this kind of violence. His relationship seems strictly more like partnership based, and he didn't hint at trying to manipulate her or intimidate her. Was this intentional?
Yeah, no, I think that like, again, he was kind of based on actual people, but I did kind of just want to talk, like use that as just kind of like a symbol almost for her inability to kind of escape her past, but also like just again for like the because if you think about it, like Michael's the one who kills the dog. Like he could, you know, and everyone hates the dog dies. And I wanted to create this kind of like different levels so you could examine and see like who is truly the villain, you know? And it's like, is he more justified in kind of being a bad person because of his circumstances, like as opposed to someone who like Graham, who's just like killing outright for like no reason. Yeah, so for me, it was just like a way to examine all of that kind of stuff. But again, I think because he was based on real people, for me, it was not going to be something, he behaved like the people did in real life, I suppose. It's apart from the murder. That always is not true.
And real Demi and Michael, they both have problems with addiction, but they both experience it and they're responded to by others. Very different. Is this something you saw in real life too?
100%. I will just say, like, from my own experience, hanging out with extremely wealthy people, a lot of them were on drugs. And it's totally different. You know, it's like either they were or they had been at some point and they're now in recovery. And I feel that way about celebrities and actors too that I've met, and I've met a lot, and not just like throw at everyone, but It's for sure 100% different. Like, and people, I mean, people who are in that kind of world, like even talk about it, because I think that, you know, people say that you don't really like become like a junkie unless you have to do bad stuff to get the drugs. Otherwise it's fine. You know what I mean? Like you can do all the drugs you want if you can afford them. It's when you can't that people start getting into like criminal behavior, you know,
Yeah.
which I don't think is true, but it's just like, that's like, I think it's bad no matter what. Why so? Not supposed to act like this, but I can't help it. Oh my God. Sorry, so cute.
What did you see next for Demi and Lila?
Usually she should be asleep right now. Oh man, you know, I did like a lot of, maybe I should give you, maybe I should give her a treat, to reward her for this video. You know what's funny? Like I did like a lot of, well, because I'm working on like a TV show now, but initially like I had a lot of calls with different production companies to talk about like future, if there'd be a future seasons and stuff like that. And one of them had like a cool idea that she was like, I think they're gonna like team up and they're gonna like play the game, but they're gonna twist it. So now they're gonna be playing it against rich people and they're gonna like team up and take down rich people. And I was like, that's so cool.
That's cool. That's cool. That'd make a really good second season, you know?
Well, yeah, especially because I feel like, well, now we need, like, we've done the like game rich people play with poor people, like, let's start fucking with them now.
Yeah.
Hey. Okay, Garrett.
What happens after Margot's sabbatical?
I don't know. I'm like, let me think. I don't know. Gosh, she'd be like, I honestly think she's, I don't know. Isn't that her dog or her son? Like, this is gonna be bad.
It was interesting though with her garden and her artwork. She had this real macabre sense of, you know, the Dante's Inferno garden and her artwork that had Marie Antoinette holding her own head in her dining room where people were eating. I mean, that was all very imaginative and interesting and very visual.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I mean, gosh, I don't know. I was saying, because when I was talking about if there would be like second seasons, I was always like, dude, there's no way Graham would actually be dead. She'd like find a way to bring him back. Got the money. Maybe like a robot or a clone or something.
So the last page was like Lila at the fountain with the plumber. And then it seemed like she met like a new tenant. Was that supposed to be Demi at the beginning, like the real Demi? Or is it Lila back at the house again and she has a new tenant after everything that happened?
Yeah, it was supposed to be the second one. And like, honestly, the intention was that she was just going to have now a tenant that was going to be her friend. But I feel like a lot of people read that and like, oh, she's going to start playing the game again. And I was like, oh, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, my intention was that she was just like, okay, now I can actually do whatever I want. Because before she was like controlled.
That's good. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. You're not supposed to do this. You're naughty. You're so cute.
I really liked the simulation with the gold dust idea. Have you done something like that where you shoot people with gold dust?
I have played paintball. So like in the original version of the book, it was just them going to play paintball. And I was like, this is not cool enough. Like the original like versions of the book that I wrote were way more grounded in like reality, you know? So I just took all of those things and like made them way cooler. I was like, how can I make this like super like cinematic, or what's the craziest thing I can make this? And that's what I like kind of came up with. And I think that's like a really cool thing too, because like whenever I did actually like talk to people about making it into like a film or a TV show, like they were all like, oh, we want to do that, you know. Oh, and you know what else inspired me? Community, because they always have those huge paintball episodes, which I think are so cool. Huh.
I like that. I like that Community made it into the book in a small way.
I'm making, I think, a movie now. Side note.
So you've had some interest in making it into a series?
Yeah, so it's like, it's always, you know, it's a weird thing behind the scenes because you just never really talk about stuff until it happens. But I've been working on it with people right now, like really cool team of people who are really like on the same page, and it's been really fun to do. So it's cool. But you never know. I mean, it's so like, it's such a crazy industry.
Yeah, yeah.
Sister. So we'll see, but it's been fun. I have to figure out, because I have to start doing other calls for my other book, and I'm like, I need to kind of figure out what we're gonna do with her, because she is interested in doing things. Come here. Come on. Okay, sorry. I'm back. Yeah, I was planning to give her a Kong before, but she was asleep. Should have.
Who do you feel was the worst person in the book?
Me, no. I don't know. I guess Graham is probably the worst. I feel like he's like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, he's pretty awful.
Yeah, kind of scary. And again, just like literally doing bad stuff for entertainment, that's insane. Not good.
Yeah, we got a glimpse of his golf trips, which I
Yeah.
thought were like golf. And so he takes Demi. And then I was like, okay, so what actually is happening? Is he hurting people? Is he killing people? Because he seems totally like, and like
Well, that's the
kids.
thing is like, yeah, you never really, I mean, it's never really explained exactly what is happening. I think I wanted to show, well, first of all, I guess that you don't know, but also the way that it's like he kind of gaslights Demi in that moment, and he's sort of been doing that to Lila all along with this kind of like, why are you freaking out? Like, you know, what do you like? What? I didn't do anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I wanted to show, because I think that's such a tool that people use when they're doing really bad things.
yeah. That it's not me, it's you and your interpretation of what I'm doing.
100%.
He was very manipulative that way, where he was keeping her off balance and keeping other people off balance. That was
Yeah, totally. Wait, I have to show you. Yes.
The whole, I'm not playing for your soul. It's just a game.
Yes, exactly. Look who we have now.
Oh, look at that thing.
Oh.
Like, okay, whenever the little puppy gets out of the way, she's like, thank God you put her away. Now we can hang out and be together.
oh,
She's
sweet
better,
puppy.
she's better behaved because she's two.
And going back to these, this horrible Goodreads habit, there was, nothing like bringing up a criticism, but fortunately there was pushback on this person, as there rightfully needed to be, about, well, there wasn't enough character development. And I thought, well, I think the author is really respecting us enough to say, I'm not going to give you layers and layers and layers of character development and go into every Lila's background. Let me give you all of Lila's background and all of Demi's background. It's like, I respect you enough that I'm keeping these characters intentionally rather opaque, so you can interact with who they are and what their motivations are. I mean, that would have been so tedious if you were going to give us all this background on characters.
This is the thing, it's like everyone wants something different, and some writers are more suited to certain people than other. But like I definitely tend to do exactly what you're saying. Like I probably sometimes give too little, because to me it is boring. Like I'm a very like hyper person, and I do everything really fast, and I have trouble focusing. So for me to like sit and describe a house, it's like really hard for me to even understand why I would have to do that, because it's like, we know what a house is. I understand like it's part of writing. I'm just saying, like, for me personally, that is kind of a challenge. But like, yeah, I don't like to go into some long thing, because I couldn't focus. If I'm reading a book, I can't focus during those parts, Like in some ways, I'm maybe more suited towards writing scripts, but like I want to write books that are like scripts and that are really accessible, and like, that are kind of like a fast sort of read, you know what I mean? Because that's what I can do. I wouldn't really be the person who'd be able to write this really long, like backstory, like you said, or, what do they call it when info dump? I don't know, whatever. But yeah, I think everyone just likes stuff, you know, everyone has their way that they like stories to be told. And luckily there's so many different writers and so many different styles. And it's like
Yeah.
everyone trying to find what they enjoy. You know?
Well,
I think
and
it would have detracted. I think it would have detracted if you had given, why did Lila not have a particularly happy childhood, or why was she somewhat, it wasn't that she wasn't all that close with her parents, and it was kind of a mystery, you know, her
yeah, her
parents
parents being
were
able to be
bought
bought
off.
off.
Yeah.
Can we talk
And
about that for a second? I was like, I hope and pray my parents couldn't be bought off and be like, well, it was 35 years and it was really nice, Brittany, while we had you and we knew you, but this amount of money, like they knew our amount and there was your daughter.
Mom, what's your number?
For you, sweetie, just my daughter.
I was gonna say
Sweetie,
Phyllis and Jesse are mother and
it's
daughter.
like really low, honey. It's really low. But now for your brother,
Of course. Of course.
Oh, and they're twins.
it's a joke.
Yeah.
It's a joke.
See, we get the dark humor. You're in like-minded company.
Yeah.
We appreciate and enjoy that here.
Poor Jess.
Yeah, I just pray that my parents couldn't be bought off, but I'm like, the fact that Lila's could kind of
Huh.
got me good.
But
I
it
was
worked
like,
so
ooh.
much for me. It was much more effective to get, okay, Lila's, I mean, it was intriguing. Lila's got this in her past. We kind of get just a little bit of an idea of Lila's background.
Enough
And
to
it
care,
keeps it,
in my
it keeps
opinion.
it much more interesting, I think.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would be afraid to ask my parents what the number is. How much money would it take for you to be like, what daughter?
But yeah, I wonder how much it was, because it would kind of maybe you'd think it'd have to be a lot, but at the same time, it's like she's getting married. She wants to marry this person. You know, she's gonna go off to her better life. So you're doing her a favor.
Yeah.
And getting money in the interim, in the in-between time to cope.
For everybody. Huh. Yeah.
But to me, when she puts on, I think at this point, they're maybe not the clothes she bought, but I think she's wearing a very expensive coat that was the actual Denise. And she goes out on the street for the first time to go to get groceries or whatever. And she's immediately, people are smiling at her. And that's what you were saying before, where you fall below the poverty line. People just don't see you. They're not interacting with you. They're not engaging with you. And she goes out with that expensive coat on and carrying an expensive handbag. And the people in the stores and the people on the street immediately have a totally different reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. No, I think that's like a true thing. And I think that it's like we don't talk about it a lot, but especially it's so obvious in LA because there are literally hundreds of thousands of people living on the street, and it's people just don't look. Like they just keep looking forward, and they kind of justify it by saying like, oh, I don't want to like give them, I don't know, like hope that I'm going to give them something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even want to look at somebody because they might think that I'm going to give them $1 or something, whatever, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, I think it's, yeah, I just think it's really true. And it's kind of, it's really sad. Huh.
Did you do any research? I know you based characters on some people in real life and real life experiences, but did you need to, and did you do any research for writing this one?
Probably not. I mean, it was literally like the book was originally called like Beechwood Canyon. It was about the place where I was living. So I took like a lot of those like elements of like that and just of like Los Angeles itself. So, I mean, it wasn't like I was doing research, but it was like, obviously I had lived in that experience. So I wasn't, I guess, really necessary. I mean, I guess it's like firsthand research because you're just there.
You know, you said that you've worked with celebrities, and years ago I read a book
hung out with.
that there are celebrities that exactly about what you're talking about have intentionally raised their children outside of Hollywood. You know, they've chosen to have their primary residence somewhere else and have their kids in schools and communities there that are not even in California. And I think they're so concerned about that kind of culture
Yeah.
that they just don't want their children raised in it.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, I think it's like, it's not like to say, it's not like comparing problems, but it is like you are in a tough spot, I think, if you have a lot of money and you have children, and how do you raise them without like that sort of affecting them in a negative way? And I think it's really tricky because you can't, even if you're trying to do certain things, it's like live in a certain place or make them work or do things like that. It's still not, it's a little bit of a con, you know what I mean?
It's not authentic. Everybody knows who their parents are.
Yeah,
right?
and it's like they know that they have money, but I mean, what can you do? And I don't think having money is, necessarily makes you a bad person.
Right.
So there's that too. It's just, it can be dangerous. Temptation. Oh man, we got a lot of, what am I doing? I have like phone calls. We got a lot going on up here.
Because there are families, we've had American families that have had a lot of wealth, and the expectation is for their children, you have to give back. You have to give back. You've had all these advantages, and so in your life, you've got to, run charities, you've got to give money, you've got to work, you've got to have foundations that actually help people. And there's an emphasis on that, but we didn't see that with Margot and Graham. It wasn't about, we have this wealth, we have to give back.
I know, yeah, that's interesting. Like, because if we ever like made it into a TV series, that is one of the things I've thought about, is because there obviously is like this this huge kind of like industry in extremely wealthy circles of charity, and these charity events that are these like crazy lavish events that do raise money for charity, but that are themselves like super like,
yeah.
So yeah, that is interesting. But I also think that's one of those things that maybe you don't want to touch, just because it's like, you never want to be saying a negative thing to give people an excuse to say, I'm not going to give money, Yeah. I think that's probably also why I didn't really talk about that, because I don't think it is a good thing. That's the tricky thing, to give money, even if you're doing it in a kind of a flamboyant, slightly offensive way.
It is sometimes offensive. Your book reminded me of this old documentary, Michael Moore, Roger and Me, where these people up in Flint, Michigan, these very middle-class people who were doing just fine when the auto industry when GM was strong. And then as it was failing before being bailed out, they were losing their homes. And meanwhile, the CEOs, who were still getting their huge bonuses and still raking in the money, had this funny charity where they spent the night at a jail, and they dressed up in, prison clothes, and it was all fun. They had all kinds of jail themed things, staying in the cells. And it's like, so meanwhile, people were being evicted from their homes. And it was just
just how out of touch we are.
Yeah, the whole shift there, and not understanding these people who had worked for years for GM.
Well, and I think that is kind of touch upon how Graham is, because I think that he has this kind of like fascination with poverty as it being entertaining, or as it like being like the solution almost to like his problems, because I can't feel anything, so I want to be around people who are struggling because I'll feel that, which is kind of weird and creepy.
We haven't really touched on Lila's friends, or who really were not in any way friends,
Yeah.
But this circle she was in, where that was all very superficial and
kind of
mean. Sent her a postcard while she was in prison.
I know, that was her real, I know. Well, see, that was like because that was the one that was like Graham's ex. So because it was like her husband's ex, she was kind of like afraid of her, but I kind of wanted to make it so it was like there was a possibility that they could have actually been friends.
Yeah. Especially since she knew about Graham's interests and fetishes, I guess.
It's a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
They could have been friends.
You know what? Well, this is like, but what, not like funny, but like after I wrote this book, so I wrote it in like November of, was it 2020? And like literally a month later, that whole Army Hammer story came out. And I was like, oh my God, that is Graham.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Oh my God. And it's like exactly how I like, I never thought of Army Hammer, but just like totally like this kind of bland, you know, rich. And he's even from LA. His family's like an LA family. So I was like,
Yeah.
wow, so funny.
And that's kind of old money kind of family.
Yeah, like they have, I didn't realize this, but they have like all these like parks that are like the Hammer Park and stuff like that, like in LA. Yeah, so it was like perfect. In a bad way.
How do you think Margot killed Graham's dad? And I'm gonna assume the maid that he ran off with.
Oh gosh, I think she would definitely have someone else do it for her. She's like that to me, that's like she just source it out. That's not her style.
Oh, do you think it was like her first version of the game where she like convinced some person to like kill?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely pay someone to do it in it. That's like pretty much how she solves everything. So
Do we have anything else? This was awesome. Thank you so much for being with us. Your puppies are precious.
I'm excited to read your next book.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when
I
does
am
it
too.
due
I am
out?
too.
You have our support. I can tell you, like, this fit right in, sense of humor wise. It was an easy read, like you wanted to keep going. Super fun. So
It
when's-
was.
yeah, it comes out on June 6th, so it's gonna be like a year from now. But
Okay.
it's totally different. It's like a third person with like multiple character perspectives. It's like the daughters and the moms and totally different.
Mhm.
I
But-
read some good reviews of your, was it Girl Disappeared? What was?
Oh, If I Disappear, yeah.
If I Disappear? Yeah.
Yeah,
A lot
that
of
one
people
looks
like
good
that
too.
book, so I've got that on my list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, guys. I
Do you
appreciate it.
ever do arcs out of curiosity, like book club arcs, or would you be interested in?
I'd have to ask my publisher. But I could like ask if they could do like a digital thing or something, maybe if you were interested.
Absolutely. I was gonna say we do that a lot of times with authors, and so like we'll do a set list like of songs that like inspire or things you could listen to while you read. You know what I'm saying? And I design for a living, so I would design it to match kind of all your promotional materials. We do a bunch of arc reviews for you if you wanted, so that at least you
Okay,
get some like
yeah.
good word of mouth out there.
Yeah, send me like, I guess, sort of like details of like how many or what all that, and then I
Yeah.
can forward that. They haven't, obviously, it hasn't been put up on NetGalley or anything yet, so I'm not really sure like 100% what they're, but I would think they'd be open to it. I would assume. I don't know.
Awesome.
But I'll say that I want you to. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us. Happy Sunday.
look, he's here.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, who's- oh, I
Thank
was like,
you.
who came
I
back?
really have to figure out what I'm going to do when I have to take professional calls. Oh my goodness, and hire a babysitter. Oh, that's me. You're so good. Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me, and I hope everyone has a really nice day. Have a good Sunday.
You too. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Cheers.
All
Bye.
right, bye.
Bye-bye.